Imagine what Lily Sutherland felt like when she got the call to tell her that the first part of her cruise had been paid for, and they were waiting on her to send in the second part. A card had been approved. They were waiting on her to send in the second part, and she and her husband were going on that trip to the Caribbean. It was a bit unnerving for her, particularly because she was 86 and her husband had been dead for 8 years. Somebody was trying to steal her identity. Can you imagine what Marvin Wilson felt like when he sees a charge on his MasterCard to the Best Buy for the new Xbox, the $500 one that comes with the big set? And he's 92 and living in an assisted nursing facility. Somebody was trying to steal his identity. You know, we live in a world of identity theft, where people will take your Social Security card, they'll take your driver's license number, and they'll create a new image. And the people that the world doesn't steal their identity from, the world, if it doesn't steal your identity, it'll sure try to alter your identity. Because we live in a world that majors in having us to fit in boxes that they're comfortable with us being in. They tell us who we are, who we cannot be. They give to us what they think our aspirations ought to be, what our goals and achievements ought to be. We live in a world of identity theft. The wonderful thing about Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus is that Jesus specializes not in taking identities, but giving us a sense of who we really are. That the master majors in helping us to become what God is calling us to be. And I don't know who I'm talking to today, but somebody listening to me, you know what it's like for somebody to tell you what you can't be, what you can't do, or what you ought to be, or somebody to try to steal what is your identity. I want to suggest that Jesus is in the business of giving an identity gift in a world of identity theft. That's what he did for Peter about 25 miles north of Galilee in a little place called Caesarea Philippi. In Matthew, the 16th chapter, if you'll turn there with me, verses 13 through 20, we'll see Jesus give an identity gift in a world of identity theft. When you find it, say amen. Amen. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, other Elijah, and still other Jeremiah, or one of the other prophets. But you," he asked them, "who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus responded, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he gave disciples order to tell no one that he was the Messiah. The grass withers and the flowers thereof fade away, but the word of our God shall stand forever. An identity gift in a world of identity theft. You may be seated. Matthew, the 16th chapter, has with it a weighty overshadowing. There's a heaviness in the air now. The disciples had spent, and they thought, and they had kind of spent a time blowing up. They had traveled with Jesus, and they had got to see him do miraculous things. To be honest, just between family, you know the disciples must have felt like they were big ballers. I mean, here we are rolling with Jesus. He is the hottest rabbi going around. Man, were y'all there when he fed those 5,000 men and then had food for his family? And we were with him, and so we got some leftovers to take home. Matter of fact, Jesus was so cold, one time we were on a ship, right? And we were caught in the middle of the ship, and we were in the storm. And y'all, we looked up, and there Jesus was walking like he had a cement sidewalk. This brother was cold. We were so cold. We've had people to die. He took us to the funeral and said, hey, this ain't no funeral, it's a family reunion. Let's celebrate. But something has happened in Matthew 16. There is the shadow falling over the ministry of Jesus. It appears to be almost the shape of a cross. The chilly mist of Golgotha has taken away that initial zeal. Jesus starts talking funny to his disciples. I got to go, I'm going to die. He gets them alone in this region of Caesarea Philippi, and it is into this setting that this conversation takes place. Jesus says to his disciples, who do the people say that I am? Jesus understands something here, that people will talk to other folk about who you are before they talk to you about who you are. And Jesus understands something here. He understands that anyone who does not know who they are, society will tell you who they think you ought to be. If I didn't know better, I think I'd slipped up and started preaching already. And so he asked them for the public assessment. That's what he does. He says, now who do the folks say that I am? And they give them a response. One is based upon people's expectations. They've been looking for John the Baptist to come back, and so some people say that you are John the Baptist. And people will judge you on who they expect you to be. We've been looking for John to come back. John was beheaded. We've been looking for him to come back. Some say Elijah. We are expecting them. And not only will people expect, but people have a tendency in their expectations to project on you who they would be if they were you. Some say you're one of the prophets. Some say you're this. Some say you're that. This is who we expect you to be. And let me tell you, you've got to be careful how you walk around trying to live up or down to other people's expectations. You got to be careful how you let other folk define who you are, because you will spend your whole life trying to be cut and whittled into somebody else, and you will eventually find out that you have cut yourself away and you don't even know who you are. People have a tendency to project on you what their expectations are. I was sharing with this morning, I tell you remember when the prodigal son comes back home, his brother hears that he's back, and his brother goes and tells his daddy, now this is your son who spent your money on harlots and partying. Now what's funny to me is that when the prodigal when his brother comes back, the elder brother comes back, he doesn't even know what's going on in the house. He has to ask somebody, what are they doing? He said, they're having a party for your brother. He doesn't know. His brother's in a far country. Now, he doesn't know what's going on in the house where he's working, but he knows what his brother was doing in the far country. What he was really saying was, if I had that kind of money like him, here's what I'd spend it on. And when folk place expectations on you, what they're really saying is, if I had what you had, this is what I'd be doing with it. People have a way. Then they will either talk about, they want to define you by their expectations, or they want to define you by their own experiences. You may not believe this, when he talks about these are the prophets who come. You may not believe this, but almost any relationship you're in, work, if it's marriage, if it's dating, if it's school, if you're church mates, you probably won't believe this, but you're probably not the first person that person has been in a relationship with. If somebody's your church member, they probably been a member with somebody before. If y'all are dating, they may have dated before. But here it is. You got to be careful because people will bring past experiences into present realities. And they will tend to judge you. I know as a pastor that those who see me as pastor, some see me through the eyes of other pastors that they have had. But I refuse to allow anybody make me pay for debts that I didn't create. And you got to be careful in your relationships that you don't expect for people to live up or down based upon other experiences. Because the truth of the matter is that if you place upon people your expectations or your past experiences, you will never get the real essence of that person. Who do they say I am? Well, they think you're the prophet. They think you're Jeremiah. And those are some major ballers in profiting. But that's not who Jesus was. And you've got to get to the point where you refuse to allow other people to dictate or to define who you are. Because what they will tend to do is they will make you uncomfortable being who you are. Can I tell you? I appreciate who I am. And when you start to appreciate who you are, you can operate as you are. And eventually you will start to celebrate who you are. Let me tell you about Delvin Atchison. Here's the one thing I do better than anybody else in the world. I am not the world's best golfer. No, I'm close. I'm not. The Lord won't let me get any better because I'd have to leave the church and go on the tour, so he keeps me around. I have friends who can sing. You've heard my pastor. My pastor can sing till angels get jealous. I can't do that. But do you know what I do better than anybody else? I am the best Delvin Atchison in the world. I do me better than anybody else. And you got to learn how to appreciate who you are. Do you know who I am, y'all? I am the president and the CEO of the Delvin Atchison Fan Club. I get up in the morning and I tell myself, Delvin, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Don't let anybody else define. That's why they call it self-esteem. You give it to yourself. I don't need everybody, but I need somebody in here who can say, I'm glad God made me who I am. I'm not knocking who anybody else is, but if God had wanted another them, he'd have made two. He made me, and I made in his image and in his likeness. You got to love who you are. If you're not, you'll keep trying to change. And I know folk right now who are miserable. I know folk right now whose whole life is spent trying to convince somebody you are something other than who you really are. Your life will be miserable if you've got to spend your whole life in social media searching for significance. You got to find out who you are and refuse to allow the public. I told our church this morning, I have to be the last person in the world who watched Black Panther. I didn't see it until last night. I saw Black Panther last night. Amen. I was going to preach on identity, and I thought it might help. And so I was watching it, and I was watching the prince who was getting ready to replace his dad. What's his name? T'Challa. Wasn't it? Well, he was getting ready to replace his daddy. And when he got ready to replace his daddy, he was in that fight. He had a challenger. He was in that fight. And as he is getting beat, he's about ready to give up. He looks back at his mother, Angela Bassett. That's how I know I'm old. Angela Bassett. And she says these words. She says, show them. Y'all heard, y'all read. Y'all saw that book. Show them who you are. Because what she was saying is they don't know, and they're going to make you be. Show them who you are. And that's that word I want you to know, that when you refuse to allow the public to define who you are, you've got something inside. Show them who you are. That's that word Mufasa. That's what Mufasa said to Simba in Lion King when he's at the river. He's running from his uncle Scar. He says, you've forgotten who you are because you've forgotten who I am. You are more than you have become. That's what I want you to know. Don't forget who you are. And so he says, who do people say that I am? He says, they say this. And then Jesus does this thing. He asked them, he moves from a public assessment to a personal acknowledgement. In the Greek, this word you, which is why in the CSB it's divided. He says, and you, who do you say that I am? Y'all, number one, if you don't know who you are, the world will define who you are. But number two, if you don't know who Jesus is, you don't really know who you can become. If you don't really know Jesus, you're living beneath your potential. You don't really know you. I like this. Watch what he says. He says, "Who do you say that I am?" Yeah, I got what they said. And you know, there's always a group with the they say. Now you know they say. They say, and I always ask for a list of they. You can, now who and do forgive this grammatical inconsistency. Who is they? Tell they to come tell me. No, they won't do that. I've been looking for they for 50 years. But watch what Jesus says. I know. Okay, that's what they say. What do you say? And Peter got ready to say something, but before it left his head, but before it made it to his mouth, the Holy Ghost got it and changed it around. And Peter says this. Peter says, "Thou art the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one." We don't use terms Messiah and Christ. Peter says, "You are the liberating king," is what he says. What he says to them is this. The Jews who had experienced one oppression after another. Peter says, you're the one who's going to come in and be our deliverer to break up this, that we are under bondage, but you're going to set us free. And you and I are under the bondage of sin. We are held captive, but our King, King Jesus, has come to liberate us, to set us free. He is the one who has come to set us free. I want you to meet that Jesus who sets us free. What do you have to say about him? Well, can I tell you? I believe in him. Amen. Not just some fictional character who came down from heaven and angels were singing, but a literal God allowed him to be born. He lived, he bled, he died. And because of what I believe, it affects my behavior towards him. I'm not saved because of how I behave. I'm saved based on what I believe. Because I ain't trying to get in nobody's business, but somebody ought to help me testify. Sometimes I don't behave like I'm saved. But I believe in him. And when you believe in him, not only have I believed in him, but I've been with him. When you really believe with him, you try to spend some time with him. Every now and then, you just want him to walk with you and talk with you. Every now and then, you want to steal away. You want to turn off the phone. And the longer you get to know him, the closer you get. I've been with him. I've been through some dark spots with him. And let me tell you what he did, that if you believe in him and you'll be with him, you can be blessed by him. He has blessed me over and over again. And I'm not even talking about the stuff you think. I'm not talking about that the Lord has blessed me by the size of my house. I don't care how big your house is. That folk in apartments can be blessed, and folk got big homes that don't even know the big houses that don't even know. You know why I've been blessed by him? It's because if I'm in a 10,000 square foot house or if I'm in a one bedroom efficiency, I've been blessed by him because that place becomes a home where peace dwells. Yeah. If I got a $15 Timex or a $10,000 Rolex, my blessing from him isn't the watch. It's the fact that he's allowed, in the words of the old saints, my golden moments to roll on a little while longer. It's not how much time I got, it's that he makes my time matter. I've been blessed by him, not just to wear clothes, but I've been blessed because if I don't have on anything nice, I got something nice on the inside. I've been blessed by him. Not because I don't get sick, but when I'm sick, he tells me he'll hold my hand and he'll heal me. I've been blessed by him. Not because I haven't known tears, but because he still dries my tears. I've been blessed by him. Not because I haven't had to go through the storm, but I found him to be shelter. I don't need everybody. But I wish I had some folk up in here who can say, I've been blessed by him. It ain't about how much money I've got. It's because I've got a sense of purpose in my life. I've got joy like a river. I've got peace. I need some folk who say, I'm blessed because I got another chance. I've been blessed by him. Peter says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now watch this, and I'm just about through. I used some of my time shouting on the offering, so I'm going to give you some of it back. There is this public assessment. There's a personal acknowledgement. But here's what Jesus does. Jesus does a powerful affirmation. He says to him, now, this text teaches us that if I don't know who I am, society will try to define who I am. This text teaches me that until I know who Jesus is, I really won't know who I am. But this text teaches me that when I do know who Jesus is, he will help me to become all that I can be. That's what this text, okay, in this text, right. So watch what happens. He says, now y'all, let me tell you, we say that Peter was in the inner circle, and that he was close to Jesus. But let me tell you, I don't think Peter was close to Jesus because Peter was a better Christian than anybody else. No, I don't. I tell people about me being my mother's favorite child. You know why I'm a favorite? Because I needed more mama attention than anybody else. I got in so much trouble with my mama. Do you know what I would have done if I wasn't right up under? Here is why I think Peter was in the inner circle. Y'all see how much trouble Peter got in with Jesus? I mean, Peter pulled a knife out and cut a man's ear off with Jesus standing there. Can you imagine what would have happened? Y'all, Peter started sinking when he was walking with Jesus. Can you imagine what would have happened if Jesus had been somewhere else? Y'all, let me tell you, the good thing about Jesus' inner circle is Jesus ain't looking for the best and the brightest. He's looking for those who are available. He's not looking for the ones who act the best. He's looking for the ones who need him the most. And Jesus does this amazing affirmation to Peter because he gives Peter leaves with a new knowledge, because he leaves with this understanding that this is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the anointed one. Really, in Matthew, it's the first time that this word has been pronounced. Oh, they had said it when they got in the boat. This man must be the Son of God. But they spoke out of fear, not out of faith like Peter does. He has this new knowledge, but then Jesus gives him a new name. Listen to what Jesus says, and he does a play on words in the Greek. The word Petros, which means Peter, is a chip, a small stone used to throw. Jesus says upon this Petra, what you said, Petra is the foundation stone. Jesus says to Peter, who he knows is going to mess up, Peter, you a chip off the old block. See, the church ain't built on Peter. It's built on the fact that Jesus is the Son of the living God. But Peter would catch that and say, we are living stones. Y'all, we can't be the rock that the church is, but we can be a chip off the old block. He leaves with a new name. He says, I'm going to give you a new name. Your name is going to be Peter, Stone. Yeah, that's what you're going to be. You're going to be my new little rock based upon the rock. But Peter leaves with a new nature. Here is what's amazing to me. God can change us, and even if we mess up, he doesn't give up on us. Here is why I'm excited about the identity gift that God gave. Peter, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, you are going to be a rock. Now, y'all, in the next verses, Jesus had to look at Peter and say, get behind me, Satan. It's a tough journey on the way to being what God has wanted you to become. But you've got to hear his voice. This same Peter who would mess up. Peter messed up over and over again. But Jesus knew about it when he named him. When Jesus gave him that name and he gets ready to leave, he looks at Peter and he says to Peter, Peter, you're going to mess up. The devil has asked for you, but I prayed for you. And when you are converted, when you turn back around, Jesus gave Peter a name, and on the day of Pentecost, Peter stood up and preached. 3,000 souls got saved. Peter lived up to his name. But I got some good news, y'all. Peter gave Jesus a name. He says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. I'm glad that Peter ain't the only one that lived up to his name, because Jesus, in order to be the Son of the living God, just like Peter went through some stuff, Jesus went through some stuff. He encountered affliction. He had to go on through the cross. But the good news is that on that third day, he is still the Son of the living God. I tell y'all why I wanted to shout. You know why I wanted to shout yesterday when I was watching Black Panther? It was after the prince had been wounded, after the prince had been beat up. He did not become the king until they buried him. They buried him, and when he got up a king. Hallelujah! They buried my Jesus, stayed in the grave Friday night, stayed there Saturday, but early, Sunday morning, he got up a king. Is there anybody here? All hail King Jesus. All hail Emmanuel. He's a king, I tell you. Right on, King Jesus. And some glad morning, I'm going to see him for myself. And I'm going to tell him, thank you that I am who you say I am. I am redeemed. I've been bought with a price. Since King Jesus has changed my whole life. If anybody asks you who I am, tell them I am redeemed. I am who God says I am. The doctor says I'm sick, but God says I'm healed. I am healed. And that's the good news. Jesus wants to give you the gift of identity so that no longer do you need other people to tell you who you are. I am who God says I am. That's his identity gift.